Hey there, true crime fans. Welcome back to For Criming Out Loud and our bedtime series called Crime Me to Sleep. We've been reading While Idaho Slept, and this is the 6th episode. So if you're new here, make sure you subscribe. That way you can go into the playlists and start any book we've covered from the very beginning. So let's get into episode 6 of While Idaho Slept. Part 5, Chapter 23. Xana Kernodle grew up in Post Falls, nestled in the heavily wooded Coeur d'Alene Mountains halfway to Washington State, on the winding Spokane River. She had an older sister, Jasmine, a confidant in her early years, although the girl's parents, Jeff and Kara, didn't last long together. In Xana's younger years, Jeff was briefly incarcerated on drug-related charges. Xana's mother was frequently incarcerated as well, even, reportedly, just weeks after Xana's birth. For a time, when Xana and her sister were still very young, both parents were in trouble at once, and the girls needed to live with relatives. Xana's aunt, Kim, a big-hearted, church-going Christian, took them in. Her own children were grown, and she raised Xana and Jasmine for just under 2 years in Post Falls, loving them both dearly and offering the structure that had been missing from their lives. Raising her nieces felt like a blessing to Kim. She had had fun with the girls. Xana had been a joyful, impish child, her aunt recalled. On one occasion, when Xana was small, Kim was looking for her in the house and found her hiding out in the bathroom. "She'd found my Crisco," Kim said of Xana during the Post Falls memorial service on December 2nd, "and she had wiped it all over her body like it was body lotion." She laughed at the memory. The bathroom had been covered in Crisco as well. It was all over the walls and on the floors. They lived in a house with squeaking floorboards, and the two girls slept in a room together. Many nights, Xana liked to stay awake past her bedtime, getting out of bed to horse around. "Aunt Kim, Xana won't go to bed and she's keeping me up," Jasmine would complain from their room down the hall. Kim would get out of her own bed to investigate, but her steps creaking along the floorboards would alert Xana to her imminent arrival. Every time, she could hear Xana's little feet scurrying back to bed, and by the time Kim had reached the children's room, Xana would be back under her covers, pretending nothing had happened. It became a game they played together for a while. The girls' mother continued to struggle with drugs and the fallout of addiction, but eventually their father put the pieces of his life back together, and Xana and Jasmine went to live with him. He stayed healthy, and the stability lasted. The girls became active in sports at a young age, and Xana was a standout gymnast in her late elementary and junior high years. Todd McLean was her gymnastics coach at Flip Factory Gymnastics in North Idaho for about 6 years, and his daughter, Sydney, was one of Xana's best friends during that time. Xana's dad, divorced from the girl's mom by now, was working his job in construction and working hard to raise his children alone. The schedule was hectic for him, and Xana would go from gymnastics straight to her coach's home until her father could pick her up after work. "If you had spent 5 minutes with her, you would have fallen in love with her," her coach told an ABC reporter about those years. "She just loved everybody, and she was so witty, so funny. She would have drawn you in." McLean's daughter, now a gymnastics coach herself at McLean's new academy in Florida, agreed. "She was just the funniest person," Sydney said of Xana during her early years when they were close, sharing gymnastics and a deep friendship. "If you were with her, you were laughing the whole time." When Sydney heard about Xana's murder, she'd been preparing for an evening training session with her students. The news was crushing. And then I coached. I was a hot mess all night watching the girls, she told a reporter. Because it's kind of like watching me and Xana's relationship, the relationships they have with each other. She could remember Xana as a little girl in a blue and white leotard, bows holding her hair back. The two of them together, sometimes wearing their medals around their necks after a weekend competition. We were really, really close in middle school, Sydney told News Nation. I always knew I could count on her, even now. She hesitated, her breath catching. It's just a lot, she said. Of the thousands of photos of Xana circulating online after her murder, she looked happy in each. In her TikTok videos, she was dancing or laughing, performing skits. She was jumping. She was holding out her arms, just like in the gymnastics photos of herself as a little girl. She was still little, smiling at the camera in her Instagram photos. It's almost like losing another daughter, Sydney's father told ABC. His eyes were bloodshot with sadness. Same age as my daughter. This could have been her. Chapter 24. When Xana and Jasmine were growing up, many people thought they were twins, even though Jasmine was 2 years older. They had the same high cheekbones, the warm-toned skin, and the long dark hair that hung straight down. When Xana was older, she wore half shirts and high-waisted shorts in the summer, Carhartt beanies in the winter, her hair braided into long pigtails tucked into the collar of her puffy coat. She painted her nails red for formals, drank beer out of plastic cups, wore a scrunchie on her wrist sometimes. Her personality was magnetic, and Jasmine would often get upset when the two were teenagers because she thought her own friends liked Xana more than they liked Jasmine herself. Xana's friend Emily had a big sister who was friends with Jasmine, and the two older girls would side-eye their younger siblings for grabbing all the attention and for genuinely being more cool. It was just an undeniable fact, the other siblings thought, one they begrudgingly learned to deal with. Emily now remembered Xana through a stream of tears at the post-falls service. She was my other half, Emily said. Everyone knew we were a 2-in-1 deal. They'd been friends since the day they'd met. She was an amazing friend, comedian, pop star, therapist, sister, girlfriend, and daughter. This girl was the light in everyone's life. Emily constantly told Xana how much she loved her. After high school, they'd gone to different colleges, but still made time to see each other as often as possible. One time, Xana had even convinced Emily to drive to Moscow during a snowstorm because the two girls were missing each other. Emily says Xana guilt-tripped her into the journey, complaining that they never had enough time together. Each time Emily would visit at the U of I, Xana would show her friend off as if for the first time, even though everybody had already met her before. She would introduce me, and then introduce me again to all of her college friends as, "This is my best friend, she's Asian," as if they couldn't figure that one out. Emily smiled through her tears. She always told me that if she were to die tomorrow, Emily said, the tears flowing more heavily, she would be okay with it because she had lived every day to the fullest. Not that she really believed that was a possibility. She knew she was going to make it big one day, Emily said, at something. She told me that if she ever got famous, she would bring me along to enjoy that life with her. Their lives had seemed to offer endless possibilities and endless years. We talked about our dream wedding and how we were going to be each other's bridesmaids. We talked about what kind of moms we were going to be. I always said I wanted 3 kids, and she said she'll probably be the single one and have no kids because she'll be the cool aunt. She choked on her words. Life is so unfair and unpredictable. My heart aches knowing I can't see her again in this lifetime. The cool aunt. It made perfect sense. Xana had never forgotten all her Aunt Kim had done for her when her parents couldn't cope. While Xana was growing up, her mom had more than 40 interactions with the police in North Idaho. Most were for possession of drugs or drug paraphernalia, but some were more serious. She had once been convicted of injury to a child for exposing her daughters to her drug use. Kara wasn't a violent woman, but she was struggling. It showed in her mugshots, her face progressively skinnier with age, but also with the wear and tear that comes from prolonged substance abuse, her long hair getting grayer at the temples, her eyes more sunken. She was infrequently in Xana's life, but she was still her mother. Kara's Facebook page, like many mothers of a certain era, often reflected her love for her children. "What did your daughter inherit from you?" read the caption of a 2019 name test post that she had tagged Xana in. Name Test offered a quasi-spiritual astrological reading comparing a mother's and a daughter's names. "Just like you, Xana is incredibly genuine and loving," Kara's results read. "She has inherited your heart of gold and has seen how happy you are when you can help your loved ones. But she has also learned from you how to be fearless in the face of challenges. Your strong, nonconformist personality has inspired her to never lose her fighting spirit or pride on who she is." Xana's mom was trying. There were photos of her children and of herself looking healthy as recently as 2019. Xana had been her little girl, even if she couldn't care for her in the way she had wanted to. She had watched Xana from afar, proud of her gymnastics accomplishments and her durable spirit when she was younger, and proud of the woman Xana had been growing into. At one point that year, Kara posted, "One of the best feelings in the world is when you hug someone you love and they hug you back even tighter." 3 years later, her daughter was dead and Kara had relapsed. Days after the murders, she was back in jail. Chapter 25. While in high school in Post Falls, Xana was on the volleyball, track, and soccer teams. She had held down a job as well, working as a server in the Coeur d'Alene, Texas Roadhouse between the Dollar Tree and the Red Lobster. The view from the restaurant's parking lot was less suburban. Just beyond were the rolling green foothills leading into the Coeur d'Alene National Forest and its 750,000 acres, which were among the most pristine in America, home to grizzly bears, wolves, cougars, and wolverines. Xana's home with her sister and father and their dog, Shoeshine, was modest and tidy, with 4 bedrooms, dark hardwood floors, and a backyard with a green fenced-in lawn. Life with her father now was completely different than it had been in Xana's younger days. Jeff had started his own firm, Coronado Construction, building anything from small engineered decks to large, impressive houses with spiral staircases. He took the girls on family vacations, which Xana loved, and in time, her lifestyle was similar to the comfortable one she had lived with her Aunt Kim. She graduated from Post Falls High School in 2020, and by late that summer had moved to Moscow, where she was majoring in marketing at the U of I and joined the Pi Beta Phi sorority. At Pi Phi, she became close to another freshman, a girl named Ella, who said after Xana's death that Xana cared about her relationships more than anything else, and that is the best quality anyone can have. At the Post Falls Memorial, Ella remembered the time at the end of their freshman year, after many of the other students had gone home for the summer, when she and Xana decided it would be a blast to get a kiddie pool and try to swim in it. The Moscow heat was already scorching. They found a blow-up pool at a local store, then ran across the parking lot with it over their heads and stuffed it into Ella's car. They spent that day and many others that summer soaking in the shin-deep water the pool held. Actual swimming, they discovered right away, wasn't an option. It's not much, but it's the little things and the spontaneous things that don't seem interesting, but they become the best days of your life because of the people you're around, Ella said. A lot of my best days had Xana there. At the Mad Greek in downtown Moscow, a small family-owned restaurant where both Xana and Maddie worked, a co-worker named Isla hadn't gotten the chance to know either of the girls well. But they had trained her when she was first hired, and she remembers Xana as kind and helpful. Both she and Maddie were sweet, Isla says, a hint of tears in her eyes. Soon after she had started at the restaurant, Isla would be wearing a black rubber memorial bracelet on her left wrist, the names of the 4 murder victims, including her coworkers, printed in the university's signature golden yellow. The same bracelet appeared on the wrist of the daytime bartender at the corner club, a girl with long blonde hair who slightly resembled Maddie, and on the wrists of baristas at local coffee shops, students walking through campus, pedestrians in town hurrying to their jobs, or stepping into stores, or getting into their cars. The yellow of the font matched the yellow flowers Xana held in photographs, a small sunflower behind her ear in one as she posed beside a river, her hair draping forward over a halter top, dabbled sunlight on the water. Chapter 26. Xana appeared in police body cam footage when the Moscow PD were once again called to 1122 King Road after a noise complaint, just after midnight on September 2nd, 2022, less than 4 hours after their warning to Maddie over the phone. Country singer Lee Brice played over an outdoor Bluetooth speaker on the second-floor patio around the back of the house. A young man stood on the patio with his back to the approaching police officer, who spotlighted the area with his flashlight. "Moscow PD," the officer announced. A young woman tried to go back inside through the slider. "Turn the music down," the officer now shouted up from the weeds. They didn't. He shouted it again, gesturing with his flashlight. The music stopped. The officer told them, "I need somebody to come to the door." The young man on the patio kept his back to the officer, who then added, "The music stays off. Party's over." The officer clicked his flashlight off, walking past Xana's bedroom on the second floor, and then past Bethany Funk's on the first floor, as the ground sloped downward toward the communal parking area. The officer and his partner stood at the front door in the dark at first. When Xana eventually opened it, the officer shone his flashlight at her. She was barefoot, wearing black shorts and a red hoodie, her identification in her hand. Her eyes looked wobbly in their sockets, as if searching for rest. "Hello," she said. "Hello, miss. What's your name?" the officer asked. "Xana," she said pleasantly. "Xana," the officer repeated back to her, his flashlight in her eyes. "Do you live here?" "Yes." She pushed her hair out of her face. "Okay, did Megan talk to you earlier?" "No." "Okay, does Megan live here?" Xana looked confused. "Megan?" The officer's partner checked his notepad. "Megan Mogan?" Maddie Mogan, yes," Xana said. Maddie Mogan, the first officer corrected himself. She does live here? Xana seemed caught off guard, searching for words, possibly intoxicated. Sorry, she's at the club. She's 21. I am just going to bed. I have a couple of friends over, but this is my ID. She began to show the police officers her driver's license, turning it over in her hand and staring at it, but the officers didn't appear interested. Have you talked to Maddie tonight? The cop repeated. Yes, I have, Xana said, the flashlight in her eyes. She is at the corner club. Okay, did she tell you anything about what happened earlier or anything like that? Honestly, not really. I've just been here, just trying to go to bed. In the hot, wide beam of the officer's flashlight, Xana's fingers clutching her ID made shadows against the siding of the house. The officer took her ID finally and handed it to his partner. Xana seemed more nervous than the situation called for. But then, she'd grown up with police encounters that didn't necessarily end well. She again explained that she was not 21, but that her roommates were. We're not here to talk about the alcohol stuff, the officer told her. Okay, yeah, Xana seemed to relax finally. But this is the second noise complaint that we've had here tonight. I am sorry, Xana said. So this time it was the blonde gal and the guy on the back porch playing music? I sincerely apologize, Xana told him. I am just going to go to bed, so... Okay, just so you understand, you could be getting a misdemeanor citation for this, which means you have to go in front of a judge and explain why you couldn't keep the people in your house quiet. Okay, Xana said. We've already talked to Maddie once. The only reason she's not getting a ticket is because she's not standing here in front of me. But I'm telling you right now, if we have to come back, you're getting a ticket. Okay, so I'm not right now? Xana asked him. I'm fine right now? You're not getting a ticket right now. I'm just trying to go to bed. Okay. I mean, I understand. You guys, you're coming here. I'm just going... She gesticulated awkwardly, struggling for the next words. Her body seemed to be losing balance from exhaustion. We could hear you from clear down the road when we were coming up here, the officer told her as a final word. I am so sorry, Xana said. We're past the point of having polite conversations, okay? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Xana told him. Eventually, the officer's partner pointed to an upstairs window and asked, Is the blonde gal and the guy up there, are they roommates too? He was pointing to Dylan Mortenson's second-floor bedroom. I'm sorry, what? He repeated. The blonde gal and the guy that's upstairs, are they roommates too? None of my roommates are home, Xana said. Those are all my friends. Before leaving, the first officer asked Xana, Do you understand 100% what's going to happen? I understand, Xana said. I'm just going to tell everyone, get the fuck out of here. The two police officers eventually turned back toward the driveway. You take care, one said to her. They snapped their flashlights off, and the body cam footage went black. Chapter 27. Xana's mother, who sometimes went by the name Kara Kernodle, but more often Kara Northington, was arrested on drug-related charges in the days after Xana's murder. While detained in the Kootenai County Jail in Coeur d'Alene, Kara was provided with a public defender, Ann Taylor, who would serve as her legal counsel as she navigated the complicated court processes. Taylor had also represented Maddie Mogan's family after similar drug-related brushes with the law. This wasn't unusual in the small and sometimes claustrophobic legal system of the far north, where very few attorneys chose to live. Northington was kept up to speed on the King Road homicide investigation by following the news from jail, but in December, The courts allowed Kara temporary release to attend the memorial service held for Xana and the other 3 victims at a Post Falls church. Xana's older sister, Jasmine, spoke to a large audience from the podium, reading from notes on her cell phone. She was my baby sister, but she was so much wiser and experienced so much more life than I ever have, Jasmine said of Xana, eventually adding through sniffles. She was so positive and lighthearted and understood the gift of life more than anyone I know. Standing beside her, Xana's father, Jeff, kept his head down, hands deep in his pockets. I was so happy that she was dating Ethan, Jasmine said. Xana had never had a boyfriend before, and my dad and I wondered if she was ever going to get one. She smiled at the memory of her sister finding love with Ethan. The way she would talk and smile about him was something I had never seen her do before. She truly loved him so much, and I know he had so much love for her. After a beat, she added about all 4 of the victims. It's comforting to know that they all are watching down on us from heaven now. Jasmine was in tears by the time she ended her remarks. I love you so much, Xana, she said. When she finished, she hugged her father. Jeff spoke next. That kid shone light to the day, he said of Xana, smiling as he fought back the tears. She taught me how to be a dad, and I didn't know that until she was gone. Xana's sister stood beside him, sometimes shaking with sadness and listening to her dad. She really became the woman she was going to become, he added. The last time he had seen Xana was a week before her murder. He had visited Moscow for the weekend and stayed in a nearby hotel. He had fixed the broken lock on the front door at the King Road residence for Xana and her roommates, according to Xana's mother, who had reportedly been in contact with Xana recently. The house looked clean. Xana was taking care of business, so far as Jeff was concerned. She was even looking after him, he told the mourners. After he had consumed alcohol during their visit, Xana had taken the car keys away from him. You had too much to drink, Dad. You can't drive, Xana told him. We'll get you a ride to your hotel. He smiled at the memory of Xana being the responsible one, and that wasn't unusual, he remarked. She would often look after her roommates, too. She was being the mom to all the kids. Xana, whose mom had been missing for much of her life, had learned how to nurture and protect others. He was happy to see that. Everything was just about as good as it ever could have been, he said. Xana's mother did not make public remarks at the memorial. Instead, Kara fled and then got high for 4 days. She was rearrested but remained free on her own recognizance while awaiting further court dates. She did not appear for those dates. She absconded to Spokane, Washington, where she reportedly got a hotel room and again got high on methamphetamine and fentanyl. While she was still on the run, News Nation was able to get a hold of her on a cell phone. She spoke to them on a split screen from inside a vehicle. Her voice sounded grainy and full of pain. She wore a bandana on her head and looked malnourished. Her eyes were sunken. What appeared to be her life's belongings were stuffed into the back seat, the neck of a guitar poking into the frame. She choked on her tears. Are you going to be all right? The anchor, Ashley Banfield, asked her. I hope so, Kara said. Eventually, Kara was apprehended and returned to Kootenai County. The Daily Mail spoke to her from the jail. I relapsed after my daughter's killing, she told them. Then 4 days after that, I got picked up on new charges. Then I didn't go to my next court date because I was still getting high. Somewhere along the road, Xana's mom had taken a few wrong turns. Now it was hard for her to find her way back. She was suffering from drug withdrawal in jail and still trying to wrap her head around what had happened to her daughter. "It's a fucking nightmare," Northington cried into the phone. Jeff Kernodle, too, was hounded by the press for interviews. He allowed his local station in Avondale, Arizona, to ask him a few questions over the phone. He was reportedly too distraught to appear on camera. His answers were brief. He had last heard from Xana on the night of the murders, he told the station. At midnight, he said, and she was fine. Her death was still so hard to comprehend. He had found minor solace in the autopsy report he had been shown. Xana had apparently fought back against her killer. There were bruises on her arms. She was a tough kid, her dad said. He gave no more interviews after that. So that wraps up episode 6 of While Idaho Slept. As always, if you enjoy this content, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Also, if you'd like to reach out to me, you can contact me through my webpage at forcrimingoutloudshop.com. And while you're there, take a look around. A lot of really cool things for true crime fans like us. Again, thank you guys so much for being here. I truly, truly appreciate your support in this new series, Crime Me to Sleep. Till next time, good night.